Well, hello everybody. This is Saturday morning. Mikey is not here. This was a smaller group this morning. David has a question about how to deal with people who don't know how to deal. Would that be a way of saying it, David?
Sure.
Pardon?
Sure.
All right. So, the way to deal, the short answer is the way to deal with people who don't know how to deal is don't deal with them. Certainly, don't try to fix them because they're there to fix you so that they know how to deal. In fact, they're trying to deal with it by voicing what they have to say to you, and that they kind of suck you in and get you to interact with them, and it winds up being kind of an argument. Is that the case?
Yeah, it's like holding back is like biting my tongue and not really feeling like I'm being true to myself, but just trying to grin and bear it, causing myself discomfort.
Okay. Well, true.
And I realize if somebody lies, cheats, whatever they do, you don't you have to forgive them, but you don't have to be around them. But I'm kind of in a situation where it's hard not to be around them. They're my neighbors.
Actually, that's a backward kind of way. If you don't, if you're not around them, if you don't have to deal with them, then you don't have to forgive them. That in fact, this is a basic point about the teachings of the Buddha. In Sutta number 36, the Buddha gives an analogy that I refer to as a log in a bog. Hello, Ben. Glad to see you. So,
hey, Dhammarato, nice to see you.
The log in the bog is actually, let us say, a tree that's fallen into the swamp. And that we can make the analogy that here you are as a freestanding tree and you've fallen into the bog. And what is the bog? Is all of the various viewpoints from all the various people. And if you stay in the bog, if you stay in society, you're going to get waterlogged with all the various opinions, mud, gook, moss, and all of the other stuff that we can catch from society. Hello, Eric. So, the log in the bog is a story that the Buddha tells in the sense of if a log is in the bog, can it be set on fire? What do you think, Ben? Can a log that's soaking in the bog, can it be set on fire? Now, at various times, when the log first falls into the bog, it kind of floats. But over time, it begins to sink at one point to the time that it's still on the surface, but it's just barely on the surface. And then later than that, it's going to get completely submerged. And so, for sure, when the log is completely submerged, it can't be set on fire. Now, the analogy about setting it on fire would be the ability to practice the Dhamma. And so, if we take that log out of the bog and put it up on the shore, can it still be set on fire? Ben, what do you think? Michael, what do you think?
You have to let it dry out first.
Yeah, not yet.
Right. So when it first comes out of the bog, it's still soaking wet. But over time, you have two influences. One would be the sunlight to dry it out, and the other would be gravity to draw the water down. And so the top part of the log that is in the sun will dry out first. So you can actually, I think everybody remembers a time when people dried their laundry, not with a machine, but hung it out on the line. And as it progressed, the bottom part of the garment would still be wet, but the top part of the garment had dried out. You ever seen that? All right, so in the tumbler, I think that it stays, sort of uniform as the drying process happens. But think of it as the top part of the log starts to dry, and therefore it can be set on fire. So what that is an analogy for is for us who are practicing the correct Dhamma, is to get away from society for a while, and hopefully for more and more time, and also to stay more time in seclusion. Now, the Buddha said, go to the forest, go to a foot of a tree, go to an empty hut, go to a pile of straw, but in there, he did not say, and bring a pile of Dhamma books with you. Instead, what he said was, bring your mindfulness to the fore, which is in a way saying, start to burn that log, to really start to look at what's going on. Mindfulness in this case is sati, to remember to look at what we're doing, to remember to look at the fact that the log is now drying out a bit. And so, David, that's what I would suggest is that you begin to spend less time with other other logs in the bog.
So my brain is, I'm kind of confused. My brain is the bog, my brain is the log in a bog, and I need to let it dry out by not putting myself in a position of having those conversations that I find uncomfortable. Avoidance.
Yes, you can make an exit with the statement of, oh, I've got to go, or look at your watch and say, my, look at the time, and then make your exit. But that's especially true when you've gotten far enough into it to recognize that people are, in fact, trapping you into an argument. Now, when I was studying psychology in a deep way, one of the stories that I ran across was that in a bar where people are drinking, when someone comes in, let us say for a point of business, like the postman comes into the bar to deliver the mail, the ones who were drinking want him to start drinking with them. People who were out then in public wanting to talk to you about, say, politics, what that means is that they're drunk on it, and they want you to get drunk too, to actually justify that they're drunk on whatever they're wanting to argue about. That in fact, arguing people, when they're arguing, what they really want is not to argue, they want you to agree with them. And so maybe that's an option for you, David, is to just agree with whatever they have to say for a little while, and then make your exit. You can make it with, darn, I never thought about it that way. Thank you very much, but I got to go. And then get away from them. What do you think?
So I guess it's just my own suggestion that they're buying into information that I think is misinformation, and it bothers me to see them accepting that.
Yeah, but you're not going to fix their broken knowledge, are you?
What's that?
You are not going to fix their broken knowledge. At best, you can just disagree with them and start to feel bad.
Yes.
And so, one thing that we can keep track of is that there's an awful lot of stupidity in the world, awful lot of stupid people. And what I would define someone as stupid is someone who believes the lies they've been told, instead of discerning that this is a bunch of crap that you're telling and I don't need it. Instead, and we start off as children, that we believe what mommy says, we believe what Uncle Billy says, we believe what the teachers say. That in fact, some teachers have gotten downright into wanting to indoctrinate their kids into whatever political or religious beliefs they have. And so we are in a long, long habit of being lied to. In a way, you can say that that's the bog. The bog is actually just a bunch of lies. And it's best to stay away from those and get dried out so that we can see things the way that they really are. But unfortunately, we've already packed in a bunch of lies. That's like in the sense that the log is still wet, even though it's been dragged on the shore. It may take months or years for that log to actually dry out completely. And so the analogy then, if we could go into it, would be when things are wholesome. The word wholesome actually comes from the word in the Pali of kusala, and unwholesome is akusala. But the kusala grass was actually, it's a very, very big, tough, heavy grass. Much tougher than lemongrass, which the blades are like 12 inches long and an inch wide, and that it's serrated. And so one of the uses of the word kusala is to be able to cut into. In English, we would use the word diagnose. The diag is to cut into it so that we will know it. So this is what we then have to do, is to start investigating or cutting into the mind that is full of a pack of lies. We can see that that stuff's unwholesome, and as we cut into it, we can begin then to free ourselves from all the lies that have been told. Now, one of the lies that you hear, let us say in general, is the world is broken and needs to be fixed. We got to learn how to do something like read and write and do some arithmetic and go work, because whatever working that you're doing is improving things, making the place better for others. Right? Haven't you been told that lie, Ben? That you're supposed to help the world?
The world's perfectly okay as it is.
Can you repeat that?
I said the world is perfectly okay just as it is right now.
Yes, well, that's the reality of it. But as children, we're taught that we've got to grow and learn and fix things and diagnose and cut things open so that we can fix them. But the things that we're cutting open is like at work, manufacturing, building something, or most specifically, helping people. And that the people that are most difficult to help are the ones who don't want your help, which is like about everybody, because they're too busy trying to solve their own problems and fix things, and they don't really want your help. And so what we need to do then is to start practicing correctly. And the first part of that is to get away from all of the noise. You may have heard this out of a radio electronics or something maybe years ago. There's what's called a signal to noise ratio. What's signal and what's noise? And almost everything that you get out of society is noise. And what you get out of observation of what's real, out of your own ears, your own eyes, is reality. That's more like signal. And that we suffer under a very high signal to noise ratio, that the noise is a lot. You can also think of all the noise is the lies we've been told. And so what we need to do is to get away from all of those lies, get away from all of those opinions, get away from all of those negative attitudes, and spend more and more time alone. Perhaps go camping. Go to the woods. Get some camping equipment. Go enjoy nature. But the way that society is structured, we don't have much time to do that while we're still caught in society. So what we can do, David, is to make sure that every day, several times a day, we stop whatever we're doing that's concerned with society, whether it's a job or whatever it is, and get away from it and come back to seclusion, come back to just you and your own mind, so that then you can begin to investigate it to find out, in fact, that you have been lied to, that most of the thoughts that you have are just old thoughts that somebody else gave you. We don't generally have original thoughts at all. So, if you can see that almost all of the thoughts that we have, we've gotten from someone else, we can change those old, unhappy, false thoughts into something more real. And one of the ways of understanding it is, in this present moment, right now, everything is okay. Now, we're not taught in our society that. If anything, the kids are taught, oh, you're special. And we grow up with that lie that we're special. And in fact, the children who understand that they're not special, that everybody's got a mind, everybody is under the influence of all the lies and all the cultural stuff, when a child can understand that, that will make him unique or not ordinary, that in fact all of the ordinary kids are special. Why? Because they all have that in common. It's ordinary to think of oneself as special. The Buddha talks about this as self. Freud talked about it as id, and mostly we think about it as ego, or when we're selfish. That's actually talking about that we're unique, that we're special. And the right way to do that, instead of seeing ourselves as special, which makes us separated from reality. If we can reunify with reality and become part of reality, then we're not special anymore. So this is the way that we can begin to practice is everything is all right, everything is fine, and there's nothing to worry about. And this is the kind of thing that we can practice. Now, David, if you keep practicing that over and over and over and over again, then you'll remember that just at the time when you need it the most. Okay? It's sort of like Murphy's Law. Does anybody here know Murphy's Law? Michael, do you know Murphy's Law?
Yes, if it can go wrong, it will go wrong.
That's the first half of it.
At the worst possible time.
At the worst possible time. So, David, let us say that you're in the grocery store buying groceries and somebody comes up and starts talking to the cashier and you about politics. That's Murphy's Law. Things just went wrong, and they went wrong at the worst possible time, which was right now. So Murphy's Law is saying that we can get prepared. That, in fact, that was the whole reason for Murphy's Law. He was working, I think, at NASA when they were having one problem after another, and when he began to realize that electronic equipment, just getting it going under the best of circumstances, was not enough. We have to fortify that electronic equipment so that it's going to be operating correctly, even under stress. So, while you're driving to the grocery store and you're in your car by yourself, you can think about the Dhamma and be okay, but when you get into the grocery store and there are people in there arguing or discussing politics or whatever like that, that means now you're in that Murphy's Law of being under stress. And we have to kind of fortify our practice so that we can be ready for those times of stress. Does that make sense to you, David? Strange little icon on his microphone. Hello, Alex.
Hello, Dhammarato.
Today we're talking about basically how do you handle society? And the answer is that when we don't have the skills, then stay away from society and develop the skills. And then when we go out in society and we get into a stressful situation, still the best thing to do is to get out of that situation, to go away, to leave the stressful situation, to take a hike, go back into seclusion. But when the mind is really strong, then the situation that we used to find stressful is not really stressful anymore. They're just having politics. It's not a problem for me. I can go ahead and buy the groceries I need and be happy. But that's for the adept. That's for the one who can really handle things really well. So the ones who are in training would be the ones who could go into the grocery store and shop, and when the stress starts up, they can leave. But the adept, when he's in the grocery store and the stressful situation starts up, he doesn't get affected by it much. But the Grand Master is not ever going to be in the grocery store. He's going to stay away from such places. Why? Because he knows that there's stress of society built right in. And so it's best to avoid it completely. He knows in advance. That's real wisdom, is to know in advance to stay away from places that's going to have stress. Now, the other side of this is that we being social animals was the reason why we were in the grocery store complaining about politics in the first place, was because we want unity, we want congregation, we want to be around other people, we want to be loved by them. But we're looking for love in all the wrong places. Then in fact, what we need to do instead is to start congregating around others who are, let us say, their log is no longer in the bog. We need to be around healthy people, wholesome people, those who are freeing themselves from the lies that they've been told. This is what we mean by Sangha. And the Buddha started the Bhikkhu Sangha 2,500 years ago, and it's still alive. It's just about the most ancient, continuously operating organization in the world. I find that so amazing that that's how strong and powerful the Bhikkhu Sangha is. And there's more and more Western people who are not ordaining, but they're beginning to filter out all of the lies that they've been told and getting back down to the basic teachings of the Buddha. But in that, we have to also deal with all kinds of stuff that we're confused about what is the real teachings. That back in the 1960s and 70s, I was involved with what they call New Age then, and they're still New Age. And that basically what you could say is New Age is a great big pot, and every religion that anybody can find, they'll throw it into the pot and stir it together to see if this stew is going to taste good. And basically what that means is there's going to be some really, really good stuff in that stew, about 1%, 5%, and the rest of it's all lies, it's all poison. So what we can do instead is get right down to the real nut. This is where people, when someone is a real adept at the teaching of the Buddha, they recognize that it's only the teachings of the Buddha that is actually liberating. All of the other teachings are polluted with lies. An example of that is that Jesus had some really, really good stuff to say. And now you have the religion of Christianity, and they're almost never quoting the good stuff that Jesus had to say. Instead, they've nailed him up on a cross, they put him high in the air, they make him into a god. They want him to save them, when all he was doing in the beginning was just giving some good advice. He was actually talking about it in the sense, behold, the kingdom of God is at hand. Behold, the kingdom of God is within you, which means look at what you're doing right here, right now. This is where the real stuff is, rather than listening to what all of the preachers and New Age groups and the witches and the Wiccans and the Islams and all of those, Hindus and atheists, which, by the way, looks like it's more and more becoming a religion on its own, and get away from all of that stuff and just come back to nature itself. Only in real nature, open sky, open field, only there do you find real nature, and there also you can find comfort, safety, and security by getting away from all of that stuff in society. So, David, do you have any remarks? I don't know what's going on with your camera. I mean, your microphone. Yeah, there you go. Well, that's Ben now. Go ahead, Ben.
The icon means that the call's held, so I think maybe he's on another call.
Oh, I see. All right. Well, what do you think so far, Ben?
It all makes sense. Yeah. If you stay within the normal society, you'd naturally get conditioned by everything that's going on in society, and you naturally get conditioned by the reality that's actually not reality. We just believed it was reality.
So when we say conditioned, that means that we're full of all the crap that we've been taught. We're full of all of the lies that we've been told.
Yeah, so seclusion helps to be able to see through it and see the actual reality of here and now, which is stillness and peaceful and not a problem.
And in reality, everything is already okay. But we're taught the lie that things aren't okay. that you've got to do this and you got to do that. In fact, one thing that we can look at is technology. Look how much technology humans have. It's getting faster and faster, more and more technology. But the thing of it is that the more technology that we have, the more people are dissatisfied with that technology and with each other. The technology does not make life better, it just makes life easier. So, by going off to the woods, sitting under the tree, sitting into an empty hut, and when I say empty, I'm talking about empty in the sense of learning to remove all of that set of lies that we've been told, and yet we have all become addicted to entertainment. We spend a lot of time on our cell phone. 100 years ago, people didn't have a cell phone. 100 years ago, in fact, they had the Wild Wild West to tame, but they were doing that from the perspective of the lies they've been told, the greed that they've been told, that they're going to be better off if they own the land or kill the buffaloes or wipe out the Indians or find the gold or any of that kind of stuff. But still, they had a whole lot more time on their hands because they weren't subject to modern technologies, entertainment. That if we would spend the time, instead of being on YouTube, if we'd spend that time just being in the moment, watching our breathing, watching what our body is doing, watching the reality, and telling ourselves with happy thoughts that everything is okay, everything's fine. Wow, what a relief it is. We need to practice that. But instead, when we become interested in Buddhism, what do? We start watching videos. We start reading books. We think that we're going to get the value out of that, to where the real book that needs to be read is the one between your ears. The real video that we need to watch is the one that's going on inside the head. This is what we really need to do. And when we're able to do that, that means then that we are no longer subject to all of the lies that we have been told. And it's actually both instantaneous and a process. What do I mean by that? Okay, it's instantaneous in the sense that if you are practicing correctly right here, right now, and freeing yourself from the lies that you've been told, if you are in fact having happy, wholesome thoughts and being in reality, you're completely enlightened right then and there. That's all there is to it. That's the entire teaching of the Buddha, is to be here now and be here now happily, seeing exactly what is. But the training or the process has to do with how often can we do that. And the more training that we have, the more frequently we'll be able to do it, but also in the regard of satisfaction, our satisfaction grows, it gets deep. Now there is satisfaction that is, let us say, unitary. It's all by itself. I'm satisfied. But as I stay satisfied, I become more and more satisfied, to where the beginner is going to say, okay, I've got satisfaction, but it's not enough satisfaction.
Investors and get them.
Hello, David. Go ahead.
I was in another call with my son. What happened?
Well, everything you wanted to know, we've talked about.
I can watch it after. Thank you, though. Thank you so much.
Yes, so it's worth repeating that, in fact, the teachings of the Buddha are quite small. There's not much to it. But what's happened over the many centuries, in fact, it happens right there in the Buddha's lifetime, that people would ask him questions and he would find newer and newer ways of saying the same thing over and over and over and over again. In fact, the sutras are highly repetitive. And so in that regard, we can do what we've just talked about and talk about it again. Now that David's back on, we can start talking about the bog and the log in the bog and how we come out of that by going into seclusion and cutting open the mind by really investigating it, looking closely, diagnosing what we're thinking, and begin to see that most of what we're thinking are lies that we've been told. Most of the thinking that we have is just somebody else's thought that we picked up someplace else. That we don't generally have a lot of original thoughts at all. That it's just the same old, over and over and over again. And when we begin to see that, we can start to come out of it and start changing it. And this is why, in the context of the Buddha, being in the present moment, being here now, means that our thoughts are of what's going on around us. What's here now? As opposed to most of the thoughts that we have is about someplace else at some other time. Like, what is this politician going to do? And oh no, this fight is happening in politics, and oh, this war is going on. Well, the war that's going on, let us say in Europe, between Putin and let us say the two Vlads, is not here. Let's be here. Let's be here in this present moment rather than someplace else worrying about something that we have absolutely no control over. And so the noble mind is a mind that can see really what's happening. And so we train for that, to be in the present moment, that when you are in the present moment, when you are free from all the lies that you've been told right here, right now, that's freedom. Wow, what a relief it is. I don't have to deal with any of that stuff. That's real freedom right then and there, and anyone can practice that. But it's also a process in the sense that the more often you do that, the more skillful you do it, you can pick up skills that you're in training, which means that you begin to do it more and more and more often till the point that you're ready for it all the time. And then, David, we talked about Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong, and it'll go wrong at just the worst possible time. Now, Murphy worked for NASA, and that in those days of electronics, as being in raw and in a new phase, just getting the machine going was enough for the engineers to cheer about. Just getting broadcasting going, just being able to get a transmission going was what they were cheering about. But Murphy came along and says, oh no, we've got to stress test that stuff, because if it's under stress, it's more than likely going to fail. Now, that an example of that was in computers in the early days, just getting the program going, and they would shovel it out and sell it. But now they have to deal with security. Security was an afterthought. Why did they need security? Is because when the program is operating correctly, you're going to have a whole lot of people wanting to misuse that. An example would be the bank puts a website up, and you can transact on the website, and all of a sudden half the accounts in that bank have been drained because they didn't have proper security. So what we're talking about now then is to build up our own personal security system. That we can't just practice the Dhamma and get it going, we've got to fortify it by practicing, by building those skills over and over and over again. So the example that I just used was, if you're in your car going to the grocery store, or maybe a football game, or wherever it is. In fact, in many places, it would be like going to church, and there you are in your car, and everything is okay, not a problem in the world. And then you step into the church, and all of a sudden, you've got somebody arguing with you. So if you have that argument happening, that's putting us under stress. The question is, can we see that argument as an argument? Can we really see enough clearly to get out of that argument, to walk away from it? So the first step would be to get our mind in a good state. Very few people are ever able to do that. The second level is to be able to get that mind straightened out well enough so that when we go into stressful situations, we can handle it well enough to get out of that situation. Take a hike, to leave. The third example then would be to be able to stay in that stressful situation but not get stressed out ourselves. That takes a high level. And then the highest level of all is don't go to grocery stores. Don't go to those churches. Have the wisdom to know where the stress is and then avoid it completely. This is at the highest level is when we never get around stress. We don't have to stress test ourselves anymore because we're wise enough to stay away from the stress. So this is the way that we want to practice, is the beginning to get the mind straightened out and then keep practicing until we can handle a little bit of stress. And then keep practicing until we can handle a massive amount of stress. And now we really know what stress is. And so when we have practiced to stay away from the stress. Alexander, does this make sense to you? I think that this is actually touching on a topic that you and I have talked about recently.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about development or training and such like this. And I remember a while back, one of the things you told me that's been really helpful for me is when I'm out in the world doing whatever I'm doing, I keep it transactional.
Okay.
I really liked that piece of advice, you know. It was a very helpful piece of advice because it let me know that, you know, when I was out, I didn't need to get wrapped up in others' agendas, didn't need to get worried about whatever it was that was going on at the church, whether or not anybody was arguing or anything like that. Could just get what I needed to get and get out of there.
Precisely.
I really liked that.
So, David, this little review that I've done, does that point to the answer to your question?
I think I will have to figure out how to modify my behavior because I'm obviously losing just by engaging.
Yes, we all lose by engaging with people who want to win. It's better
my other thing though is I don't want to become, I'm a lay Buddhist, okay? I'm not going to become a bhikkhu. I'm already living in as much reclusion as I could possibly want. I work remotely. I've been pretty much in seclusion since COVID. So, I'm stricken between, do I want to go outside and talk to the nice people and ask something that nice? You know what I mean? Like, it's easy to say, oh, just don't deal with anybody, and then you'll never deal with somebody that's unpleasant.
Well, instead of not dealing with anybody, that's for the beginner. Once we begin to get some wisdom, we begin to see who is it that's worth hanging out with. Who is it that also see things clearly enough? In other words, we're looking for noble friends who are noble enough to not argue with us, noble enough just to hang out with us. This is what we're trying to build here online. This is the first time in history we've ever attempted to actually have a noble Sangha online to where we never really see each other than through image. And that's in fact what we should be teaching when we're teaching Buddhism is that there's three aspects of it. There's the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, the triple gem. And the triple gem of the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha is all about practicing the Dhamma until you get your mind cleaned out, which is the Buddha, and then you associate with others who have their minds cleaned out too, or at least in the process of cleaning out the mind over and over again. Now, one thing that I'll tell you, David, and that was in the time of the Buddha, though most of the stuff in the sutras is about bhikkhus, that's because they were around him a lot. But he had a massive number of lay followers. They called them householders. Basically, what was going on is that when you know about the four caste systems in India, you have the Brahmins, you have the military, you have the merchant class and the landowners, and you have the Sudras. Basically, the bottom rung of the ladder were the ones who were most commonly coming into the Sangha because they had nothing else to lose. But those who were merchants, those who had land, they had obligations. They had servants and employed people and other things like that. And so it was quite okay for them to not ordain, but they would still spend much of their day hanging out and doing nothing and doing their daily duties at a minimum. In fact, the advice that the Buddha gave to the householders would be, if you're married, instead of thinking about, oh, I shouldn't be married, I should become a monk, instead have the thought of, oh, well, now that I've got a partner, let her do all the work. Let her go to the bank. Let her take care of the kids. Let her have the car. Let her have the house. Let her do whatever that she wants to do. And I'm just going to sit here and be happy. When I was in India, I read a book that had the story of Mullah Nasruddin. And in one of the episodes, the people in the town came to him and says, what do you do all day? And he says, oh, I only do important things. I let my wife do all of the unimportant things, and I take care of only important things. And they says, oh, well, what's the unimportant things that you let your wife do? And he says, buy my clothes, clean the house, figure out what house we're going to live in, have what donkeys we have, etc., like that, where the kids go to school, if they go to school, everything about that is at a low level, ordinary level, the world, and I let my wife take care of all of that stuff. And then they ask him, well, what do you do then that's so gosh darn important and all of that? And he says, oh, I sit here and figure out the nature of God. I sit here and look at what is real and what is not real. Okay, so that's basically what we can begin to do as laymen. We don't have to join the Bhikkhu Sangha, but we can learn to spend more and more of our time basically learning to do nothing. Because when you get really, really good at doing nothing, that's when you're an adept. That's when you can actually avoid the grocery store because you know it's unwholesome. So practicing doing nothing is actually a very highly developed skill that you can practice. The art of just doing nothing at all. Because look how our society treats the people in it, that you got to go do something. So you've heard that thing, don't do nothing, don't just stand there, go do something. Well, the Buddha's teaching is, don't just do something, just stand there. Or better still, sit down. All of this doing that we've been doing is because we've been lied to about how important all of our doing is. And so let's not do so much. Let's begin to have friends and commiserate with each other about how marvelous it is to have such little to do. That's really what the Buddha is teaching, is to just see things the way that they are. So, Michael, do you have any comments about that?
No, I don't. Thank you, Dhammarato.
How about you, Edward? Ben, how about you?
Yeah, I'm just enjoying doing nothing with you guys.
Pardon?
I'm just enjoying doing nothing with you guys.
Great. Yes, just hang out, just communing, doing nothing, just enjoying the vibrations. We got good vibrations, not packed down with a bunch of crap, a bunch of lies. We're in harmony. So, Ben, do you have something to say?
How nice it is to just sit here and relax.
All right. So, Eric, did you get your microphone fixed? Did you get your camera fixed? Turn your camera on if you don't have a microphone. All right, how about you, Patrick? Great. Okay, Eric had asked me about Daoism, and I'll spend a few minutes with Daoism. Now, the first thing to say about Daoism is the first line of the Tao Te Ching, which is the Tao that can be said is not the Tao. How many have ever heard that statement? In a way, it's also true of the Dhamma, that the real Dhamma, what's happening right here, right now, you can't say, you can't talk about it. For one thing, there's just too much happening right here in the moment. And so what we do is we begin to speak in concepts and in stories. The Buddha was actually quite good at making stories. He had many similes, many metaphors to talk about the Dhamma, because the Dhamma itself cannot be said. Reality cannot be said. That we use the word reality instead. But reality, the word reality, is only pointing at something. The same thing would be true about God. That God is a word that is used trying to point at something, and now they've gotten all confused because they're hung up on the word God rather than trying to figure out what God is, which in fact is nothing but reality itself, or nature. So with the Tao that cannot be said, most of the Tao then is talking about it in a way that contradicts it in our actions, in the sense of, if you try to hold something, you'll lose it. Well, guess what? You're going to lose it anyway. The Buddha would say, you're going to lose it anyway. Why bother to hold it? And Tao says, if you try to hold it, you will lose it. Another statement from Tao would be, the master does nothing, and yet everything gets done. Well, everything is going to get done in reality all by itself anyway. It's done. It's doing. But we don't have to go do anything in order to help reality. Reality doesn't need our help at all. We can just sit back and watch the show. So in a way, Taoism is, let us say, a Chinese version of what the Buddha actually taught. In fact, it's probably based upon the timing and other things. I mean, even right after the death of the Buddha, Chinese writings started showing up. So very, very early on, there was Chinese influence. And it also was steady. In the 500s, there was Bodhidharma. In the time of Ashoka, there was a lot of interchange between the Chinese and the Indians concerning the Dhamma. So one can say that um, Daoism is nothing but a Chinese version of the teachings of the Buddha with an important factor missing. And that seems to be the important factor that's missing, not just in Chinese Buddhism, but it's also missing in Western Buddhism. And that one important factor that's missing is right noble effort. We have to take the effort to make a change. We can't just see that we're full of lies that we've been told. We actually have to throw those lies out and see reality as it is. We have to see those unwholesome thoughts and throw them out and change them into wholesome thoughts. We need to see that we have the attitude of being a loser. We have the attitude of being subject to society. We have the attitude that we need help. We have the attitude that we can't do anything on our own. And we can change that attitude. That's a lie that we've been told. We've been told that lie basically by people who are trying to control us because they can't control themselves. They try to control other people. And so we have now a society of all kinds of people out there trying to control one another when in fact nobody can control their own mind. So the real teaching of the Buddha then is to learn to control your mind, to put your mind at ease, to change that attitude from being an attitude of being subject to the whims and vicissitudes, what do they say, the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. Don't get hit by them. Those arrows, dodge. Play dodgeball with reality. Don't let it hit you. Stay out of the way. Leave the grocery store. Leave the argument. Don't stay on a battlefield. Battlefields are dangerous, and our society is nothing but a kind of a battlefield.
I like it.
Go ahead, Michael.
I just said I like it.
Yeah, stay off the battlefield. That's the way to go. Go to a hidey hole where you have other people who have left the battlefield. Go watch the show. The battlefield is quite a show, a spectacular show, but we don't have to get on the battlefield. Shakespeare was the one who said, all the world's a stage and everyone is a player. I would expand that simile to where everyone's a player, everyone's an actor, but they're still reading their script. Every one of us accumulated a script in childhood, and now we go around living our lives as an actor, acting out the script, which is mostly a pack of lies. And what we can do is we can close that book and stand there on stage long enough to see that everybody else is just reading a script. And then what we can do is to leave the stage, leave that battlefield, go sit in the audience. The audience, by the way, is pretty empty. And just enjoy the show. That's the real quality, is just enjoy the show. You don't have to be on stage arguing and reading your script because other people are on stage reading their script. You can just leave the show. Take it easy. So, Ben, do you have anything to say about that? Just enjoy the show. Get off the battlefield.
It's nice to leave the stage and just be in the audience. It really is.
Yeah, there's very few people in the audience. They're all noble. Everybody else is up on stage. Patrick. Do you have anything to say?
Very good meditation today.
Okay. How about you, David? Do you have anything?
I'm just spinning in my head. The very first time we talked, it was about I was looking to join in-person Sangha, and I was left with the feeling that you were expressing to me. What I thought you were expressing to me was, you don't need that. You just need seclusion.
Seclusion is the first step. If we can't get away from it all, then how are we ever going to figure out that what we've gotten from society is a pack of crap? Once we do that, we can clean that out. Then we can deal with society happily. And if we can't, if we get under stress, then leave. Go back into seclusion. Do that over and over again until you get really skilled at dealing with things by not dealing with them. Now that's Taoist. That's the way that the Taoists would say it, is deal with all of that crap out there in the world by not dealing with it. The master does nothing, and yet everything gets dealt with.
And how do you find, as you would put it, noble people to associate with?
Well,
and you're saying online is the option that we're pursuing here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, make friends, for instance, with Alexander Hippel. He's been around for quite a while. I've got quite a lot of other students. In fact, we've got, right now, 3 guys that have been around long enough to have ordained and have been ordained for a year. Another one is Mikey. Mikey actually lives here on the porch. He's been here on the porch living with me for a year. So he's got to immersed in the Dhamma. And so make friends with him online. Have a lot of friends. You've got Alexander. We've got some really old friends. I've got Robert Cohen. He comes on. We've got Anna. Anna spent a lot of time in Goenka, and then she spent time as a nun in Sri Lanka, and now she's back in Europe, and she's doing just fine. She's a really excellent Dhamma teacher. So this is the thing that I would suggest is start making some friends. Start recognizing that you're in a community of like-minded people who really care about your freedom, rather than trying to give you something you don't want or don't need or don't know.
Well,
Pardon?
thank you.
I didn't quite catch what you said.
I said thank you for your teachings today.
All right. Well, if I can get you started on don't worry, be happy, but that's in fact the way that I would say it. It would be the entire teachings of the Buddha. The Buddha says his entire teachings is dukkha, dukkha nirodha. Dukkha is basically worry. Don't worry, be happy. Just come out of it right here and right now. Drop your worries, drop your flurries, drop your arguments with those people out there. Just be happy. That's all there is to it. It's not magic. One of the things that I have seen about Taoist people is a lot of the modern times, they're very, very magically oriented. But a lot of Buddhists are very magically oriented. All of the Christians are magically oriented. You have to be a belief in magic in order to be even around Christians, because they don't have anything real to say. Same thing with Islam. So all of the religions are basically just a pack of lies that they tell their children. And so these religions perpetuate. I think, in fact, that there's going to be eventually enough truth, enough wisdom, enough reality on the internet that all the kids are going to start leaving their religions and look for something that's worth having, like reality. So does anybody have any final things to say? Michael, do you have something to say?
No, this was wonderful. It was great to see everybody. Thank you.
Uh-huh. How about you, Alex? Mr. Lion there, do you have something to say?
Just thanks, everybody. Very good to see you. Always great to be on a call. Thank you so much, Dhammarato.
Where's your sister?
That's a good question. I'll have to ask her.
All right. Amal, good to see you. You're welcome. I see you came in late.
Yes, Dhammarato. I just woke up and joined. Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you for the call and for the teaching.
Well, practice well. Don't worry. Be happy. You see you're worried, stop it. Say, I don't have anything to worry about. Everything is already okay.
It is
All
a
right.
relief.
Pardon?
It is a relief.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. One last thing that I'd say is that we do have these Skype calls, and everybody is invited. If you see this video on YouTube, check out the description and find out what the links are. We have Discord group, I hear is very, very active. And we have these Skype groups. The problem with the Skype groups is the Skype limits them to 100 callers. Right now we're sitting at 94 in this particular group. We also have a new website that's up and running fast too, called Open Sangha Foundation, and you can find the links to it in the description of all of the more recent videos. And so I recommend that everybody go join the website and check out all the various features. In fact, we keep putting on more suttas and more articles, and we have a huge PDF library collection. But we also have a Sangha group where people can communicate with each other and interact with each other. And I would recommend that you go and post something, even if you just post, "Hi, I was on one of Dhammarato's calls and thought I'd join." So, thank you all for coming. We'll see you.
Take care,
Thank you,
everybody.
Dhammarato. Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dhammarato.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.